Hello, and welcome to the sixth video in my Jedi 101 series where I am reading from my book, Your First Step into a Larger World, an introduction to walking the Jedi Path. If this is your first video you're seeing, please feel free to check out the Jedi 101 playlist and catch up with the rest of the class. So I'm a little tired, fatigued, and pain today, but let's dive right in to Chapter 5, Attachment and Non-Attachment. In Attack of the Clones, the character of Anakin Skywalker utters the words, "Attachment is forbidden." We must be careful what we emulate from the fictional Jedi. It is not the case that because a fictional Jedi said a thing or did a thing in a Star Wars film, that we as real-life Jedi must also do this thing verbatim or at all. We are inspired by Star Wars media. We do not emulate it unthinkingly. For something to be integrated into the Jedi Path, it is not enough that it is inspired by the mythology of Star Wars. While that is a beginning, it must also have benefit and utility in the real world, both for ourselves and the others we share a sphere of influence with. I have found that cultivating an attitude of non-attachment does have benefit and utility. To first understand what non-attachment is and how it can be achieved, we must first look at attachment and what it is. We get a clue as to what attachment looks like in a piece of dialogue spoken by the character Yoda in Revenge of the Sith. You must train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Our attachments often have a basis in a fear of loss. It is important to realize that our attachments come in two forms, that they are those that are necessary and beneficial, and those that are unnecessary and harmful. It takes time and self-examination to be able to tell the two apart sometimes. There are the attachments that are necessary for life, such as food and shelter, and there are attachments which are clearly beneficial, such as the connections we share with our fellow human beings. Some of these attachments are necessary to not only being a good Jedi, but for being a good person. The trap here is that because an attachment is something we fear to lose, we may convince ourselves that an unnecessary attachment is actually necessary. One of the clues we can use are what attachments are motivated by compassion and selflessness, and which attachments are motivated by greed and selfishness. This is illustrated in the Star Wars mythology by contrasting the force used by the Jedi characterized and selfless, and the dark side used by Sith characterized by selfishness. It is this selfishness which leads to greed, the wanting of things for their own sake or to fill a personal void, or more often for the Sith characters, the wanting of power is the expression of this greed. Obtaining things leads to momentary pleasure, but it is fleeting. In order to keep the pleasure, one must obtain further things. This ramps up, and soon you begin to fear losing it, not for the possession itself, but the pain of not having it. This fear leads to anger, and anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering, usually the suffering of the person with selfishness, and any collateral damage this slide into darkness has caused. Attachments are not necessarily the wanting of things, but can take other forms, such as the desire for how you want things to be. We can become attached to certain outcomes or situations. Unhappiness often is the result when our expectations or anticipations are not met. The lesson is demonstrated in the Star Wars films with the character of Anakin Skywalker. He was never content with the things that were beyond his power to control. He wanted to affect things far outside his sphere of influence. Anakin was so attached to the way he wanted things to be that not only did he suffer, but so did those around him. He allowed his passion for how he wanted things to be rule his actions, rather than cultivating serenity as a Jedi of quality should. There's a process to let go of attachment, and it will take sincere effort and training to be able to do so. The first step of being able to let go of attachments is to be able to recognize the attachments you have in your life. This takes meditation and self-reflection. In this, we can find the guidance of Master Yoda to let go of everything we fear to lose. While we examine our mental attitudes, do we find something that we feel we cannot live without? Something that would be painful to lose? A desire that is causing emotional pain? There are also beneficial attachments, which are a bit trickier. We can hang on to these attachments, such as a healthy relationship, but still train ourselves to be unafraid to let them go. In the example of a healthy relationship, if it comes to an end, say by one of the partners dying, the connection and good aspects do not have to be lost. While we must be able to let go of the reality that a loved one's presence will no longer be in our lives, we will change with the loss, but come out a better person. This contrasts with the mythology of the relationship between Anakin and Padme. Anakin's attachment to Padme was not based on love, but rather on greed, treating her like something he owned. These are some of the ways to recognize attachments. While George Lucas had said in a 2010 story meeting for the Clone Wars television series, attachment leads to fear, which leads to anger, hate, and suffering. The Buddha simply said that attachment leads to suffering. I think Lucas may have identified one of the paths that leads there. So how does one begin to let go of attachment? I think the answer can be found in the Jedi pillars of strength, the Force, knowledge, and self-discipline. By using the Force, we manifest the attitudes of the archetypal Jedi. In this case, the core of the light side, according to Lucas, selflessness. As we encourage within ourselves the attitude of selflessness, we find joy in giving and in letting go. The second pillar, knowledge. We use the knowledge from our self-examination to identify our attachments. And this leads us to the third pillar, self-discipline. It is through self-discipline we actually do the work of letting go of our attachments. We must bring our will to bear to shape our very mind and thought processes. Make no mistake, this is training and it is difficult. But like a muscle that is exercised, your self-discipline will get stronger over time. There are no shortcuts with this. There is not one technique to bring your self-discipline to bear in shaping your mind and personality. What works for one person may not work for another, and vice versa. That being said, no one can do it for you. A therapist can guide you in such exercises, but it will be you doing the work. To begin, I suggest a reflective meditation, examining our inner lives and trying to understand the process and reasons behind what we think and feel. Once we have an understanding, we can use our self-discipline to try to change the way we see things and how we react to our various attachments. Letting go of attachments is training that is never finished, as we create new ones all the time. In this, a Jedi should be ever vigilant. But when one finds they are able to let go of attachments, they also let go of the temporary pleasure of having things, or having things be the way they like, and they enter into the hard-won, but much more satisfying joy. Okay, attachment and non-attachment. 5 years on after writing that, I think, back up 5 years ago. This was one of the core of the things I was studying and meditating upon and trying to figure out the role of attachment and non-attachment, the Jedi Path. There's many articles on attachment and non-attachment at my website, JediPath.org, links in the bottom, that explore various aspects of attachment further than what I put in this Jedi 101 material. I think the biggest change is realizing the role of beneficial attachments. As I go on further, I realize that while some attachments are unnecessary, they do have some benefits. And so, I mean, it's okay to hang on to these as long as you don't hang on too tightly. You know, it's just like you don't have to let go, but you have to be able to let go, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I talk about acquiring things in this chapter, and I'm a collector. I'll be honest. I'm surrounded by memorabilia in this office, and maybe it's beneficial. I don't know. It brings me pleasure. I like having these things. It improves my mood. But at the same time, if I had to sell them off or give them away, I'd be able to. You know, it's like I'm not holding on to these things too tightly. I have them because I enjoy them. But when it all comes down to it, they are things that can be let go. I mean, okay, so right now one of the big things I'm working through is the attachment to how things were as my illness progresses and my physical ability gets less and less. I have a hard time letting go of the memories of the things I used to be able to do, namely martial arts, sword fighting, skateboarding. Now that I'm on oxygen all the time and the illness I have weakens my muscles, these things are out of reach and I do not like it. But as part of the training, you know, letting go and trying to accept my limitations while still being aware of what I can do and trying to hang on to that. So, beneficial attachments. If I were to rewrite this chapter in 2020 instead of 2015, I would devote more time to beneficial attachments. Beneficial but not necessary. Let's see what else. Well, no, I think that's about it. I rambled on enough. Thank you for your support for this channel. My subscribers are growing slowly but steadily, and I appreciate every single one of you. And thank you for sharing and liking the video. I said I wouldn't do outros like that. My apologies. But anyway, I'm just grateful that I'm able to do this project and share my thoughts in a more accessible way than just having it in a print book. So that's it for now. Attachment, non-attachment. Lots of thoughts about this on my website. Go ahead and check that out. But for now, may the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next video.